What would you do if a mysterious box appeared at your door? No name, no sender, just a chilling note that said, "Do not open"? Evelyn Harrow couldn't resist, and what she unleashed was never meant to be found. Dive into a spine-tingling horror story of whispers, shadows, and a hunger that can never be satisfied. Chapter 1. The Package Without a Name. Rain clung to the window pane like a nervous child, tapping against the glass in quick succession, tap, 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 before gusts of wind silenced it with a low, ominous moan. Evelyn Harrow sat alone in her dimly lit living room, the lamp beside her flickering every now and then, as if mimicking a heartbeat about to give out. Her fingers curled tighter around the spine of the book she wasn't reading. She hadn't turned a page in 20 minutes. It had been exactly a week since her brother Thomas vanished without a trace. The police called it an open case, but Evelyn knew better. He didn't just disappear. Something had taken him. Thud. Her heart leapt. The sound came from her front porch. She set the book down and stood slowly, as if moving too fast might shatter the thin barrier of calm she wore like a mask. Padding quietly across the floor, she reached the front door and peered through the peephole. Nothing. She unlocked the door, the deadbolt clicking louder than it should have in the silence, and opened it cautiously. A small, rectangular package sat alone on the porch, wrapped in brown paper and sealed with twine. There was no postage, no address, no name. Just one thing, a note taped crudely to the top with the words scrawled in red ink, "Do not open." She brought the package inside, setting it carefully on the coffee table like one might place a bomb. Her breath hitched as she stared at it. There was something oddly familiar about the shape, the way it seemed to hum with a low, vibrating energy that tugged at her skin. The air around it felt colder. She blinked. The sound was faint, but it was there, a soft hum. Almost like a distant choir holding a single note, growing ever so slightly louder the longer she listened. She backed away. "No," she whispered to herself. "It's just my mind playing tricks." But the sound was real, and so was the whisper that came next. "Evelyn." She froze. Her blood turned to ice. The voice had come from inside the house. No, from inside the box. She ran to the window and pulled the curtain aside. The street outside was empty, the rain painting everything in shades of gray. No one, no cars, just the echo of a world holding its breath. When she turned back around, the note was gone. The top of the box was no longer sealed. She hadn't touched it, yet the twine lay coiled beside it like a dead snake. "Okay," she whispered, swallowing the lump rising in her throat. "This isn't happening." She stepped toward the box, hand trembling, and slowly peeled back the flaps. Inside was a smaller box, and inside that, another, and another. Each layer folded in on itself like a nesting doll, until finally she reached the last one. It was jet black, smooth, with no seams, no latch, no indication it could even be opened. Her fingers hovered above it. Thump. The black box pulsed, just once, like a heartbeat. She dropped it with a gasp. It landed silently. almost too silently, like it had absorbed the sound itself. And then she heard it again. Evelyn, louder this time. She backed away, bumping into the coffee table, her breath ragged. "No," she said aloud, voice cracking. "No, I didn't open it." But something else had. The lights flickered once, twice, then went out. She was left in darkness. Total, utter silence. Then slowly, scratch. Something scraping along the floorboards. Scratch. Thump. Closer. She fumbled for her phone, hand shaking uncontrollably. But it slipped from her grasp and clattered to the floor. The screen stayed dark. And then she saw them. Footprints, wet footprints, forming one by one across the wooden floor, approaching her slowly, methodically. There was no one else in the room, but something was walking toward her. She screamed, a blood-curdling, piercing scream that bounced off the walls, echoing into the void. The black box sat still on the floor, unmoving, unopened. And yet, it had already begun. Evelyn didn't sleep that night, not because she wasn't tired, but because every time she closed her eyes, she heard it, the whisper. It slithered into her ears like smoke, familiar, gentle even, but laced with something ancient. She stayed curled up in the corner of her couch, knees to her chest, staring at the black box. The electricity hadn't returned, and the only light in the room came from her fireplace, which she had lit with trembling hands an hour ago. Shadows danced across the walls, elongated and malformed, like something not meant for this world. Somewhere around 3 a.m., she heard scratching again. Not from the floorboards this time, but from inside the walls. Scritch, scritch, scritch. She pressed her hands against her ears. No, no more. She suddenly stood, her fatigue replaced with defiance. With trembling hands, she grabbed the fireplace poker and marched toward the box. "I'm not afraid of you," she muttered, though her voice cracked with every syllable. "Whatever you are, you're not in control." She knelt beside the box, raised the poker, and drove it down onto the black surface. Clang. It didn't budge, not a scratch, not a dent, but the room responded. The flames in the fireplace rose in an instant, whoosh, casting wild shadows on the walls. The whispering became voices, murmurs of dozens, hundreds. He opened it. We warned him. Now you follow. Evelyn stumbled back, dropping the poker. "What are you?" she cried, but the voices only laughed, not cruelly, pityingly. And then silence. Everything went still. The fire dimmed. The box was gone, and in its place, on the hardwood floor, was a photograph. Evelyn knelt slowly and picked it up. It was of Thomas, standing in the rain, holding the same black box. Behind him, barely visible, stood a figure. Tall, shrouded in shadow. Its hands rested on her brother's shoulders, and its face was hers. Evelyn dropped the photo. Then the box reappeared, sitting silently at her feet, waiting. Chapter 2. The Note That Said Do Not Open. The photograph haunted her dreams. Evelyn jolted awake just after sunrise, drenched in sweat and gasping for breath. The fireplace had long since gone cold, but she hadn't moved from her spot on the couch all night. Her body ached, her mouth was dry, But more than anything, her mind reeled with the image still seared behind her eyelids. Thomas, the black box, the shadow with her face. She sat up, eyes darting to the floor. The box was gone. Again. So was the photo. But something else had taken their place. A single sheet of aged, yellowing paper now sat where the photograph had been. She reached for it with trembling hands. The edges curled and the ink appeared faded in places, but the words were unmistakably clear. To the one who opens the box, know this, it cannot be unopened. Each opening comes with a cost. You have begun something that cannot be undone. There will be 3 warnings. This is the first. As she finished reading, a cold wind blew through the room, though all the windows were shut. The lamp flickered again, though the power hadn't returned. Then the sound came, a low echoing groaning from the ceiling, as if the house itself were shifting its weight, restless and displeased. A sudden creak from upstairs snapped her attention upward. Creak, thump, creak. Footsteps, slow, heavy, deliberate. She wasn't alone. But she was supposed to be. Evelyn grabbed the fireplace poker again and moved toward the staircase, every step agonizingly careful. Her heart thudded so hard she feared it might be heard before she reached the top. She paused at the foot of the stairs. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice shaking. No response, only silence, until another footstep echoed above. Thump, followed by something new. Click, a door opening. She forced her legs to move, ascending each stair one at a time. The hallway was darker than it should have been. Light from the windows didn't reach here. It felt wrong. Like the darkness wasn't the absence of light, but the presence of something else. Evelyn's bedroom door stood slightly ajar. She hadn't left it that way. She pushed it open with the poker. Nothing. The room was empty, the bed unmade as she had left it. But her eyes landed on the mirror across from her dresser. Something was written in the condensation across its surface. Second, just that word, nothing more. She wiped it away, hand shaking, and caught a glimpse of her reflection. But only hers. No one else stood behind her. Still, she turned around, just to be sure. Back downstairs, Evelyn tried to call someone, anyone, but her phone still refused to power on. She found her landline dead, the silence in the receiver deeper than any dial tone. Her laptop, too, wouldn't boot. Every device she touched was blank, lifeless. She needed answers. Her eyes drifted to the book she had left untouched the previous night. It wasn't a novel. It was Thomas's journal. She had taken it from his apartment the day after he disappeared, hoping to find some clue. But the pages had offered nothing until now, she hoped. She opened it to the last entry, March 12th. A box appeared at my door today. No name, just a note. Do not open. I laughed. I opened it anyway. Inside nothing, or so I thought. But that night I heard her, my sister's voice, calling my name from inside the walls. It's just a trick. It has to be. Evelyn's blood ran cold. She turned the page. March 13th. I dreamed of her, But it wasn't her. Her face was wrong, twisted, hollow. I don't think I'm alone anymore. They say if you hear the whisper 3 times, you're marked. I've heard it twice. Her hands trembled. She had heard it twice too. That night, the air grew dense again. The walls felt closer. The silence was heavier. Evelyn kept the poker within reach, every nerve in her body on edge. She left all the lights on, what few were working. She sat on the couch, the journal on her lap, trying to keep herself awake. But exhaustion pulled at her eyes like lead. She dozed, and then knock, knock, knock. Her eyes shot open. It came from the back door. 3 knocks, measured, deliberate. She stood, heart in her throat, slowly approached the door. "Who is it?" she whispered. No response. She peeked through the curtain. No one. Knock, knock, knock. Again. But this time from the front door. She turned quickly, her breath caught in her lungs. Knock, knock, knock! Side door! Knock, back door! Front window! All at once! A storm of knocking! Bam, bam, bam! Bam, bam, bam! Rattling the house, shaking the walls. She dropped to the floor, hands over her ears, rocking back and forth. Then silence. Utter silence. The kind of silence that follows a scream. She stood, legs barely supporting her, and walked to the center of the room. In the middle of the floor sat the black box, and next to it, a second note. She picked it up. Second warning. You should have listened. Suddenly, the television turned on by itself. White noise. Then, static morphed into an image. Her brother. Thomas, strapped to a chair in a dark room, eyes wide with terror. He opened his mouth to scream, but no sound came. Only the box humming again, rising in pitch like a siren without a source. Then a sharp, piercing shriek burst from the speakers. Do not open! She covered her ears, fell to her knees. The screen went black. The box vanished. And the only thing left behind was the faint outline of handprints on the TV screen. One set human, the other not. Chapter 3. The Sound from Inside. The house hadn't slept. Even as dawn light crept through the blinds, the air remained thick, stale, and cold. Evelyn sat curled up at the edge of the couch, eyes bloodshot, staring at the dark screen of the TV, where her brother's terrified face had flashed just hours before. Her heart pounded in slow, aching thuds. The poker was still gripped tightly in her right hand. She hadn't let go all night. She didn't remember falling asleep. But she must have, because she woke with a start. Knock, knock. Not at the door this time, from inside the walls. She held her breath. The sound came again. Knock, knock, a slow, hollow rapping, as though made by bony fingers against plaster. Then came the hum. Hum, low at first, like a forgotten note on an ancient cello, growing steadily until the floorboards began to vibrate under her feet. Stop, she whispered, her voice thin, raw. But the sound didn't stop. It shifted, became something else. Click, click, click. like the skittering of insect legs against wood. Then, scratching. Scratch. From beneath the floor, Evelyn leapt to her feet, the poker raised. "Get out!" she screamed. Silence. Total. And then a voice. Underneath. It was Thomas's voice. But twisted. Distant. Echoing as though carried on wind through a tunnel. "Thomas?" "Underneath." Her breath caught. She looked down. The rug beneath the coffee table shifted, just slightly, as if something was moving beneath it. With hesitant steps, Evelyn reached out, grabbed the edge of the rug, and yanked it away. But trapdoor! She had lived in the house for over 2 years. She had never seen it before. The door creaked as she pulled it open. Releasing a breath of air that smelled of damp earth and something older, something decayed. It was darker than pitch below, the stairs steep and narrow. She shone a flashlight down, thankfully one of the few working devices left. The beam barely reached the bottom. The walls down there were rough, made of stone, not the foundation of a modern house. It looked more like the inside of a crypt. And then the sound started again. Hum. She descended, one step at a time, the wooden stairs groaning beneath her weight. The moment she reached the bottom, her light flickered. "Don't die now," she whispered to it. Something moved in the shadows. She swung the light. Nothing. Then came the whisper, "You shouldn't be here." She turned a full circle. "Show yourself." And then she saw it. Not a creature, not a person. A wall, covered in pages. Hundreds of torn scraps of parchment nailed to the stone with rusted pins. Each one handwritten, all in the same frantic, jagged script. The same warning, "Do not open." Evelyn stepped closer, heart hammering. Her flashlight swept over the notes. Some were newer, others brittle with age. One in the center was different. It had her name on it. Evelyn Harrow, do not open. The edges curled as she reached out, fingers trembling. The instant her skin touched the paper, a shriek echoed through the chamber. A high-pitched, otherworldly scream that came from nowhere and everywhere at once. She fell backward, ears ringing, the flashlight clattering to the stone. In the dark, something moved. Fast. She scrambled to find the light, found it, turned it back on. Nothing, only her ragged breathing. But then a whisper so close it brushed her ear. "You opened it." She spun, and there it was, the black box, sitting neatly in the center of the room. She stepped back. "No, you weren't here. You were upstairs." A deep thud behind her made her jump. She turned. Another box. Identical. And another. And another. Boxes appearing from the shadows, surrounding her in a perfect circle. Each humming. Each vibrating. Each whispering. Voices overlapping. Growing louder. One more time. 3 warnings. "You're marked. Open it, open it, open it." Her scream tore from her throat, raw and primal. She grabbed the poker and swung wildly, smashing it into the closest box. It split open, but inside was only darkness, blacker than black, like a hole in the world. And from it, a hand emerged, long, pale, fingers too veiny. It grabbed her wrist. She shrieked, trying to pull free, but the grip tightened cold as death, unyielding. The other boxes began to split. More hands, more whispers. The chamber filled with moans, clicks, and an impossible chanting in a language she couldn't understand. And then it stopped. All at once, she blinked. She was standing in her living room, breathing hard, sweating, crying. No trapdoor, no boxes, but on the floor lay one thing, a single note, warning 3. Now we begin. Chapter 5. The First Night of Whispers. Night fell like a curtain of ink across Evelyn Harrow's home. It was the kind of darkness that felt sentient, like it watched her with invisible eyes. Since the box had vanished that morning, and with it her voice, Evelyn had existed in silence, wrapped in a cold dread that refused to leave. She had tried to speak several times, but no sound escaped. Even her breathing felt quieter, muffled somehow. Like the house itself was absorbing everything she exhaled. The clocks had stopped ticking. Even the wind had ceased. By 10:07 p.m. Evelyn had sealed every door and window, lined the mirrors with towels, and lit every candle she could find. Their flickering flames offered a fragile comfort, though their light never seemed to reach the corners of the room. And that was where the whispers began. It started as a breeze. No, it mimicked a breeze, a soft flutter, brushing past her ear. Then another. Then words. Evelyn. She froze on the staircase, her bare feet glued to the cold wood. She turned slowly, holding a knife in one hand and a candle in the other. There was no one there. But the air felt thicker. The whisper came again, closer now. He's still here. She backed up the stairs, eyes wide. Then something moved in the hallway above. Not a shadow, something more deliberate, more solid. She ascended the last few steps, and as her candlelight reached the hallway, it caught the tail end of a dark figure slipping into her bedroom. Her breath hitched. She crept forward, heart thudding loud in her ears. The hallway felt elongated, warped, the floorboards groaning under each cautious step. She reached the bedroom door. It was open. She hadn't left it open. Tap, tap, tap. Something knocked against the glass window from inside the room. She pushed the door open slowly, the hinges whining. Nothing. The window was shut. The room was still until her eyes fell on the mirror across the room. The towel was gone. The mirror stood exposed, reflecting her room back at her. But not quite. The bed was made in the reflection. The curtains were moving, though there was no wind. And someone stood behind her in the glass. Tall, faceless. She turned with a cry, nothing there. But the whisper came again. You left the door open. Evelyn! She ran from the room, down the stairs, tripping over herself in panic. The candles flickered violently, casting chaotic shadows that danced like demons across the walls. She crawled into the corner of her living room, gripping the knife tightly. Her whole body shook. The whispers multiplied. Not just one voice now. Hundreds. Some sobbing, some laughing, some chanting her name over and over like a hymn. Evelyn, Evelyn, Evelyn. Her eyes darted to the fireplace. Smoke was curling up, not from a fire, but from within the bricks themselves. A deep, guttural moan began. Hurrah! Like breath forced through collapsed lungs, then scratching, behind the walls, above her head, under the floor. Scratch, scratch, tap, 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 everywhere. Her knife slipped from her hand. She clutched her ears, sobbing silently, her voice still stolen. The whispers grew louder. They spoke of things she didn't understand. Ancient names, forbidden places, promises made in the dark. She screamed, but again, no sound came out. And then footsteps, slow, heavy, rhythmic, descending the stairs. Thump, thump, thump. She looked up. Nothing was there. But the footsteps continued crossing the floor toward her. She backed into the wall, hands trembling. A whisper, hot and wet, pressed against her ear. We watched you open it. She turned. The black box sat beside her again, wide open. This time a tongue black, forked, slimy slithered from within, curling toward her cheek. She scrambled away, knocking over a candle. The flame hit the curtain. Foom! Fire erupted. Smoke choked the room. The alarm didn't go off. The lights didn't flicker. They were already dead. In the blaze, she saw faces, twisted, burying, screaming in the flames. She ran to the kitchen, grabbed a pot of water, and doused the fire. Smoke clung to her lungs. She coughed. Still no sound. The fire died. The box was gone. But now, carved into the wall above the fireplace, first night, we are inside now. The whispering faded, like air slowly escaping a balloon. She stood in the ruined silence, alone. Or so she thought. From upstairs, the sound of a lullaby began. A music box melody, faint, unfamiliar. It played just 4 notes, again and again and again. Chapter 6. Things That Shouldn't Move. The lullaby didn't stop. It played through the entire night, a broken music box melody repeating its 4 haunting notes again and again. It came from upstairs, but no matter how many times Evelyn climbed the steps to locate its source, the sound always seemed just 1 room away, distant yet ever present, like it was luring her through her own house. When the sun finally rose, she collapsed on the floor of the hallway. Exhausted and hollow-eyed, her body begged for rest, but her mind remained on fire. Her voice had not returned. Her throat felt shredded from silent screams. The house had shifted. Dot. Things were not where she left them. Books rearranged themselves on shelves. The photos in the hallway frames now depicted people she didn't know, somber-faced men and women in antique clothing, all staring directly at the lens with unreadable expressions. She tried to tear one photo down, but the frame wouldn't budge. It was fused to the wall, as if part of the house itself. The whispers had quieted, but something worse had taken their place. Movement. At first, it was small. She left a spoon in the sink. It vanished. She set a lit candle on the table. It moved 3 inches to the left when she looked away. Then the chairs. At breakfast, if pouring cereal into an empty bowl could be called breakfast, she reached for a chair and found it wasn't where it had always been. It had moved to the far end of the room, turned backward. She stared at it, breath short, then slowly approached and righted it. She turned to get her bowl. Screech! The chair dragged itself across the floor behind her. Evelyn spun around. The chair now faced the wall. She stepped away from it, hands trembling. Then another sound, thump, from the second floor, and then another, thump, thump, like something heavy had fallen or jumped. The lullaby returned, quieter now. But the notes were out of order, sour, wrong. She tiptoed up the stairs, a knife in one hand, a flashlight in the other. The bulb flickered, casting jittery shadows that stuttered across the wallpaper. When she reached the top step, she froze. Every door upstairs was open, every single one. She never left them open. She crept down the hall. Her bedroom door stood wide, and inside the music box sat on her nightstand, turning on its own. The lid was open. Inside, a small ballerina spun. But her face, it was Evelyn's, twisted, screaming. No sound, but the mouth opened impossibly wide as the doll spun in slow circles. Evelyn slammed the lid shut. The music stopped, but the ballerina kept turning, even with the box closed. Thump! She turned. Her bedroom mirror was uncovered. She was certain she had draped it. In the reflection, she saw her room, but behind her, standing motionless, was a figure. Too tall, arms too long. Its head was tilted, watching her. She spun around. Nothing. But when she turned back, the reflection still showed it standing there. Closer. She screamed silently and stumbled backward out of the room. All down the hallway, the lights began to flicker, one by one. Buzz, click, buzz. The walls groaned, a low, wet creaking, like wood swelling from within. Then came a knock at the attic door. Knock, knock, knock. She had never been up there. She didn't even remember owning a ladder for it. But the attic hatch was open now. The steps had unfolded on their own. A foul draft drifted down from the darkness above, and from within, something shifted. Tap, tap, scrape. Not footsteps, fingernails, dragging across wood. She should have run, but her legs betrayed her. She climbed. The attic was impossibly large, far larger than the footprint of the house. It stretched into a void, lit only by the dim orange glow of dozens of candles floating. Suspended mid-air, and beneath them furniture, all her own, arranged in a perfect circle, and in the center, the box, closed again, but pulsing. Each pulse echoed like a heartbeat. Thump, thump. She stepped forward, then noticed something out of place. A chair, identical to the one in her dining room, was rocking slightly. She walked closer. It stopped. She turned. The couch inched forward, grinding against the floorboards. Scrape, scrape. She looked back at the chair. It was now tipped forward, and closer. Nothing should be moving, but everything was. The tables, the lamps, the chairs, all trembling, shaking, advancing. And then they charged. The entire room surged toward her, furniture flying, slamming into the walls, spinning and crashing. She dove aside, landing hard. A bookshelf crashed beside her, splitting in two. The black box cracked open and screamed, a human scream. No, 100 screams, wailing, shrieking, sobbing in agony. She crawled toward it, reaching a trembling hand. But then a hand shot out from inside, grabbed her wrist. Thomas, his face pale, eyes wide with terror. "Don't let them out," he mouthed. "They move when you don't look." She looked around. Everything was still now, motionless, watching, waiting. She pulled her hand back and slammed the box shut. The attic exploded in light, and Evelyn was thrown backward into darkness. She awoke on the floor of her kitchen. The music box sat silently on the table. The chairs were back where they belonged. But the fridge door stood open, and on the inside, written in frost, "You're not alone in here anymore. Scene." Chapter 7. Names appearing on the walls. The frost on the fridge had not melted. It remained there, defying the morning warmth. 4 words etched in white. "You're not alone in here anymore." Evelyn Harrow stared at the message, her breath catching in her chest. She wanted to wipe it away, to pretend she hadn't seen it. But her body refused to move. Her fingers trembled, her feet rooted to the cold tiles. Behind her, the music box let out a single note. Pling! She whirled around. The lid was closed. The ballerina didn't move. And yet, the sound had been real. She backed away slowly, heart hammering, eyes scanning the kitchen for any other irregularity. The black box was nowhere to be seen, but that didn't comfort her. It never stayed away for long. By noon, Evelyn's silence had become unbearable. She scrawled desperate questions into a worn notebook. Am I losing my mind? Is Thomas still alive? What do they want? But no answers came, only dread. That was when she noticed it. The first name. It appeared just before sunset. She was walking down the hallway when something caught her eye. A mark on the wallpaper, small at first, just above the baseboard. It looked like pen ink. Curious, she knelt. A single word was scratched into the wall in shaky, frantic handwriting. Thomas. Her breath hitched. She reached out and touched the letters. They were damp, fresh. Then, knock, knock, knock from upstairs. Again. Her body moved before her mind did, climbing the stairs like she was drawn by a string. The air grew colder with each step, heavier. She reached the second floor and paused. Every wall now bore a name. Not painted, not written, etched, carved deep into the plaster. Names filled the walls like tally marks in a prison cell. Some were old, their letters cracked and faded. Others looked fresh, glistening red, as if carved in blood. Evelyn Harrow Thomas, Fiona Margaret Harrow. She froze, her mother's name, her grandmother's, and others she didn't recognize, hundreds of names. Every available inch of the hallway bore them. The air vibrated, the lights flickered. Then came a scream, not hers, from behind the bathroom door. High-pitched, male, agonizing. "Help me! Please, get me out!" She threw open the door. The light bulb exploded above her head. Glass rained down. Inside, nothing. No one. Just fog. And written in the condensation on the mirror, "You wrote his name." She stumbled back, slipping on wet tile, catching herself on the sink. Voices rose from the walls. Hundreds of whispers, some angry, some crying, some laughing, hollow and breathless. A new name scratched itself into the wall before her eyes. Caleb Jameson. Another, Lindsay Reeves. Faster now, names appearing everywhere, covering the walls, ceilings, floors. Scratch, scratch, scratch. A constant sound of claws against plaster. She ran, downstairs, into the kitchen. But even here, names were forming across the fridge, the cupboards, the tile. All the names you forgot. They were there, old classmates, children she once played with, faces she barely remembered, now immortalized in the fabric of her home. She screamed, still no sound. Only silence, then footsteps, behind her, slow, bare, slap, slap, slap. She spun, knife in hand. A shadow darted past the doorway. Another followed. Children, small, pale, smiling, but their eyes black pits, and names carved into their cheeks. They circled her like wolves. The temperature dropped. Frost crept across the floor. The walls groaned and buckled inward. A deep rumble echoed beneath her feet. She clutched the table for balance. Then all at once, the children vanished. The house stilled. She turned and saw the black box on the counter, open. A roll of parchment rested inside. She unrolled it. A list of names. Her name was last. But there was space beneath it, room for more. The candlelight flickered, then extinguished. Darkness consumed her vision and etched into the inside of her eyelids. You belong to us now. A sound erupted from the walls, a shriek inhuman and unending. The kind of scream that lives between dimensions. Evelyn collapsed, hands over her ears, trembling. And all around her, the names kept writing, even on her skin, one letter at a time. Dot. Chapter 8. The Previous Owners. The writing on Evelyn's skin had faded by morning, but the sensation remained. It felt like ants crawling beneath her flesh, itching, burrowing, carving. Every time she glanced down at her arms or legs, she half expected to see names rising from beneath the surface again. She wore long sleeves now, layers, gloves, anything to hide the feeling of being owned. The house had quieted. No whispers, no movement, no music box, just stillness. But Evelyn knew that silence was never safety. It was bait, and something inside her was shifting. She didn't know if it was fear or instinct, but something pushed her to dig deeper, to find answers. She began in the attic. Climbing the steps again felt like crossing into another world. The air changed the moment her head broke the threshold, thicker, heavier, electric, like stepping into the lung of something alive. The furniture that had attacked her before was now neatly arranged again. The box sat on the floor, unopened, waiting. She ignored it. Instead, she searched the far corners of the attic. Dust clung to every surface, and the beams groaned overhead with each step. Then she found the trunk, old oak bound in iron and unlocked. She opened it slowly. The hinges wailed in protest. Squeak! Inside, newspapers. Dozens of them. Yellowed, brittle, reeking of mildew. She reached for the top one. Local family missing, house left intact. The article described a family of 5 who vanished overnight. No forced entry, no signs of struggle. Just empty rooms and cold meals. The address was hers. She rifled through more. Another disappearance on Widow Hill Drive. Widow Hill home haunted? 4 cases in 5 years. The story stretched back decades. Different families, different names, same result. Evelyn sat back, hands trembling. The house hadn't always belonged to her family, but it had always belonged to something. She flipped open a manila folder buried beneath the clippings. Inside, photos. Black and white, faded. People standing in front of the house. Some smiling, some not. But one thing was the same in each photo. In a second-floor window, a figure. Pale, tall, always watching. And then her mother, younger, holding a baby Evelyn, and beside her, Thomas. Behind them, the same figure. She dropped the photo. Her head spun. A low, guttural whisper echoed from the shadows. They lived here too. She whipped around. No one. But the air changed. It thickened. Grew foul. The box in the center of the room began to hum. Hum, low, deep. And then the attic door slammed shut. Bang! She ran for it, tried to open it, locked. The light dimmed, and from the shadows, voices rose. Not whispers this time. Voices. Children, adults, crying, pleading, screaming. One by one, shapes emerged from the dark. Ghost-like, translucent, flickering like old film reels. A man with no eyes. A woman clutching an infant that melted in her arms. A little boy with his mouth sewn shut, all staring at her. We were here first, they said in unison. You let it in. Now we stay. The floorboards groaned beneath her. From behind her, the box clicked open. Click! She turned slowly. Inside was not the mirror this time, but pages, a ledger, names, dates, all the previous owners. At the bottom of the list, Evelyn Harrow, accepted. The ink was fresh, still wet. She turned the page. The next entry had already begun to write itself, letter by letter. Unknown, pending. Plink! The music box started again, its lullaby warped and broken. And then a knock at the attic door. 3 slow raps. Knock, knock, knock. The ghostly figures around her began to chant. You'll forget like we did. You'll forget like we did. You'll forget. The box slammed shut. Light burst from within it, and Evelyn blacked out. She awoke in her bed. Sunlight poured through the windows. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She picked it up, fully charged. Full signal. No missed calls, no texts, no evidence of anything. Downstairs, the house looked normal. No names on the walls, no music box, no box. She opened the front door. The street was quiet, peaceful. A bird chirped. She stepped outside, numb. A neighbor waved. Morning, Evelyn. She opened her mouth to respond, but her voice was gone. Again, she turned back to the house. In the second-floor window, a tall, pale figure stood watching, smiling. And carved into the wood of the porch railing, "We stay?" Chapter 9. The Box Once More. Evelyn Harrow had learned to stop trusting the sunlight. After what happened in the attic and then the illusion of normalcy that followed, she knew better than to believe in peaceful mornings. The bird song outside, the gentle breeze, the scent of dew on grass, it was all a mask, a curtain drawn over something writhing just beneath the surface. Because the box was never gone. It was just waiting. That morning, she walked through her house with deliberate calm. Her body moved mechanically, brushing her teeth, combing her hair, changing into clean clothes. Her voice hadn't returned. Her lips moved out of habit, shaping silent words to herself in the mirror, like a rehearsal for a version of reality that no longer existed. When she stepped into the kitchen, she froze. The box was back, on the table, open, and this time it was hungry. Inside was no mirror, no ledger, only a finger, human, still warm. Blood pooled beneath it, soaking into the wood grain. Evelyn recoiled in horror, nearly knocking over a chair. She didn't scream. She couldn't scream, but her breath came in frantic gasps, her hand clutching her chest as if to hold her heart in place. On the wall above the box, a single word had been written in dripping red: more. She spent the day tearing the house apart, looking for exits, looking for answers, but the doors wouldn't budge. Windows showed streets she didn't recognize, twisted versions of her neighborhood, where houses slouched like broken teeth and trees clawed at the sky. Every photo in the house had changed. Faces were blurred, distorted, eyes were hollowed out, and the names were gone. Scratched out, even hers. The fridge still buzzed. The clock still ticked. The microwave still blinked 12:00. But nothing worked. The phone? Dead. The power? Intermittent. Time? Irrelevant. The box waited in the center of the house like a black sun, pulling everything into its gravity. By nightfall, Evelyn sat curled in a corner of the living room, watching it. It hadn't moved, but something in the air had shifted. And then, thud from the ceiling. Thud, thud, like something dropped from the attic onto the floor above. She stood, every nerve taut. Then came the dragging, scrape, scrape, scrape across the upstairs hallway. Then, plink, the music box, playing its 4 broken notes backwards. The lights flickered, and she knew the box wanted more. Not just names, not just fear. It wanted sacrifice. In the middle of the night, Evelyn dreamed. She stood in an endless hallway, the walls covered in mirrors. Each mirror reflected a different version of herself. In one, she was a child covered in ash. In another, she was elderly, her eyes black voids. In another still, she was holding the box, smiling. Behind her in the dream, a voice whispered, "You must feed it. It fed you once. Now return the favor." She turned. Thomas stood in the hallway, bound in chains, made of shadow, mouth sewn shut. bleeding from his eyes. He looked at her with unbearable sorrow, then fell to his knees. One life for another. The box appeared at her feet, open, waiting. She awoke screaming, tears streaking down her face, the echo of 1,000 whispers still ringing in her skull. She found the knife that morning, on the counter, polished, clean, waiting. The box had placed it there, or whatever controlled it had. She picked it up. Her hands didn't tremble. Her mind was clear. She didn't know what she was going to do, only that something had to happen. Something had to break the cycle. She walked out the front door for the first time in days. The street was unfamiliar. Houses leaned at impossible angles. The sun pulsed in the sky like a dying eye. But one house across the street looked real, lived in, a porch light on, smoke from a chimney. She approached, knocked. A woman answered, middle-aged, kind eyes. "Can I help you?" she asked. Evelyn tried to speak, no sound. The woman stepped outside, concerned. Then, behind her, the black box appeared on the kitchen table, reflected in the hallway mirror. The same box, same hum, same whisper. "Feed me." Evelyn staggered back, clutching the knife. The woman stepped toward her. "Are you okay? Do you need help?" The knife slipped from Evelyn's fingers, clattered to the porch. She shook her head, backed away, ran back into her house, back into the trap. She slammed the door shut, fell to the floor, and the box sat there in the middle of the room, open. Inside, a photo of the woman across the street, and beneath it, one word: yes. The screams began at midnight, from across the street, long, drawn out, agonized. Evelyn covered her ears, wept, and the box purred, a sound like static and breath, satisfied and deep. One more. One is never enough. We are still hungry. She crawled into a closet, curled into a ball, and waited for morning. But morning never came, only more names and more hunger. Chapter 10. Closing it comes with a price. The house groaned under the weight of silence, not the comforting kind, the dreadful sort that pressed against your skull, too dense to breathe through. The air inside Evelyn Harrow's home had taken on a graveyard stillness, the kind that arrives after something terrible has fed. Outside, there was no more sky, only a swirling expanse of shadow. The street was gone. The world beyond her windows had crumbled into a warped canvas of twitching silhouettes. The box had eaten again, and now it waited. Evelyn sat on the floor of her bedroom, knees pulled to her chest, bloodshot eyes fixed on the wall. Names pulsed faintly beneath the wallpaper, like veins, glowing red in time with her heartbeat. Her skin itched, burned names forming just beneath the surface again. The box had not moved. It remained in the center of the hallway downstairs, wide open, humming like a distant choir trapped underwater. She hadn't slept. She hadn't spoken. She had only watched because it was watching her too. And somewhere, deep inside, a voice not her own whispered, "If you want it to end, you have to close it." Closing it, a thought that seemed impossible. No latch, no seam. The box opened itself. It chose to reveal. But what if it could be forced shut? What if there was a cost? Evelyn stood. Her legs trembled. Her throat burned from days of voiceless screaming. But she walked. Down the stairs. Past the photographs that bled from their frames. Past the walls that whispered her name in dozens of dead voices. To the box. It was darker inside today. Not just absence of light, but an active blackness, like it sucked in the world around it. She reached for it. The moment her fingers touched the edges, the floor cracked. A groaning, grinding snap of splitting wood. The box screamed. Not a sound, a scream. Piercing. Ancient. She clutched her head as blood streamed from her nose. The house convulsed. Furniture levitated and hurled into walls. Doors opened and slammed shut in an endless loop. Bang, bang, bang! A shriek tore through the house. Thomas. He stood at the top of the stairs, eyes hollow, chains around his throat. He pointed to the box. "Close it," he mouthed. She screamed back. "How?" No sound escaped, but Thomas understood. He stepped forward, and the shadows pulled him back, screaming. Into the ceiling. Gone. Evelyn collapsed beside the box, sobbing silently. Her hand rested on its cold edge. Then she saw it. Inside, something new. A blade. Simple. Clean. Waiting. And beneath it, a note. It must take something back. She understood now. It had taken people, yes, but more than that, it had taken pieces, souls, time, memory, voice. It needed one final offering to close, a willing one. She picked up the blade. Her reflection shimmered across its metal. For the first time in days, her hands didn't tremble. She turned it toward herself and hesitated. She had lost so much. But was her life enough? Would it accept her? She shook her head. Not her life. Her voice. She raised the blade, not to her throat, but to her mouth. And with a shaking breath, she carved. The moment her blood struck the edge of the box, it screamed again. But this time it folded. The darkness within twisted in on itself, writhing and shrinking like a dying star. The walls buckled. The names ignited in flames of red. Ghosts shrieked and vanished. The entire house collapsed inward toward the box, as if gravity reversed, the universe tearing a hole in its center. And Evelyn stood silent at the heart of it all. The final whisper echoed around her. The price is paid. The box snapped shut. She awoke on the lawn, the real lawn, under real sky. Sunlight warmed her skin. Birds chirped, neighbors walked their dogs. No box, no shadows, just home. She tried to speak. No voice. Her mouth was whole, but her voice was gone forever. But the silence was different now. Peaceful, earned. She stood, walked to her door, and paused. Carved into the threshold in tiny, perfect script, closed for now.